Gawain and the Green Knight, retold by Michael Morpurgo. Chapter 1. Christmas time at Camelot. Snow crowned the towers and battlements. The wide moat lay white and still in the twilight, frozen hard enough to walk on. It did not matter though, for the land was all at peace. Only the snowflakes laid siege to King Arthur's castle, patting at its painted shutters, but no one heard them, for inside the great hall there was laughter and music. Arthur and his knights were feasting, as they had feasted every night of this Christmas season. Their appetites were huge after days in the saddle, jousting in the tourney yard, or hunting in the wintered woods. Up from the kitchens, the servants brought a banquet, capons and venison, peacocks and partridges. Gold goblets were filled, and the songs of the minstrels rang amongst the roof beams. The knights and their ladies all looked to Arthur, who sat at his high seat with Queen Guinevere beside him. They waited for him to begin, for none of them could eat before their king did. But Arthur seemed thoughtful. He pushed away his plate, stood up, and raised his voice so all could hear him. "Knights," he said, "the new year is just beginning. Tonight I will not eat until I have heard some tale or seen some feat of chivalry and high adventure." "Hurrah!" the knights roared, a bit regretfully, looking at their heaped plates and brimming goblets and hoping that somebody would have a tale to tell and tell it quickly. There was no shortage of good tales at Camelot. The place was like a hive. All summer long, the knights buzzed out of it to seek adventure and brought back stories to be stored like honey and served up golden on dark winter evenings. But many tales had been told already that Christmas tide, and now the knights looked at one another in dismay, realising they had no new ones to tell. Perhaps the king would like to hear again the story of Geraint and Enid?" said Sir Agravain. Or maybe," said Sir Bors, "His Majesty would tell us again how he became king, how only he could pull the sword from the stone." But Arthur shook his head. Old tales are always welcome when friends gather, passing the familiar pieces of the past between them. But on this New Year's night, he felt a new story was needed. And as he stood there, silent, pondering, there came a sound of hoofbeats from outside, and with a crash, the great doors were flung wide. There was a flurry of snowflakes, and the cold night air made the candle flames flutter. Into Arthur's hall rode a horseman. Knights leapt to their feet. They stared and shouted. Some reached for their swords and remembered they were not wearing them, and snatched butter knives instead, all ready to defend their king. Servants hurried aside as the newcomer's horse clattered to the centre of the hall and reared up, raking the air with its hooves. The horse was huge, and the rider matched it. He was a giant of a man, and he was green. Green! The word ran through the hall as knights and ladies noticed. This was no trick of the light. "He's green! All green!" It was not just the stranger's clothes that startled them. His holly green armour and his pine green cloak, his grass green breeches and his moss green boots. His thick, bushy hair was green too, and so was his broad beard. His face was as green as new leaves in springtime. The trappings of his horse were green on green. The hair of its coat was green. The tangles of its mane were green. and his tail were pale grey-green too, like the lichen flags which wave from winter trees. The blade of the enormous axe in the rider's right hand gleamed with a light as green as sunshine in a summer wood. This Green Knight grinned, baring teeth as green as young acorns. Who's the boss of this gang?" he demanded. "I am," said Arthur, "and you are welcome to my hall." The stranger looked hard at him, and in his eyes the green light deepened, as the light on a green hill deepens when the shadow of a cloud sweeps over it. "So you're King Arthur, are you? You've made quite a name for yourself, I'll say that for you. Wherever I go, I hears folks singing your praises. And your knights are the finest fighters in all the land, I'm told. That's what brings me here. I thought I'd see for myself how brave they really are." Lamplight winked off the mighty axe he held. All around the hall, men stiffened and grew stern, hissing at their squires to fetch swords, shields, and armour. King Arthur said, "If you come looking for battle, stranger, you will find it." But the Green Knight laughed. "Nay," he said, and held up his other hand, in which he grasped a branch of holly. "This green bough shows I come in peace. A game is all I'm looking for, a pleasant pastime on a winter's night. I've come here to challenge one of these knights of yours to a friendly competition, a simple test of strength and skill." He threw the branch down on the floor at Arthur's feet and held up the axe. "The rules are simple," the Green Knight said. "One of your men must trade me blow for blow. He shall take this axe I hold and strike one blow at me while I stand here, stock still, and then I shall strike one blow at him. Does that sound fair?"